You're listening to the Learn Like a CPA podcast, where we talk about all things real estate, tax strategy, and personal finance. Whether you're a real estate investor looking to scale your portfolio, or you're an individual wanting to take your financial freedom journey to the next level, this is a podcast for you. Welcome back to the Learn Like a CPA show. Today we're going to be talking about my 7 steps to financial freedom, the 7 steps that I've dubbed, and I put them in this order because over the years on helping out with friends, families, at my church, I found that these 7 steps seem to be the most sound that you can do today, implement in your life, and change your future. So who is this podcast today for? This podcast is for everyone. You could be fresh out of college, just getting started in your career, or maybe you're in your mid-30s or even further along. This plan is for someone who is looking to get their financial house in order. So let's talk about having a game plan. A game plan is important because without a sound foundation, you don't have any direction or guidance. If you live up north and you're trying to get to Florida, sure, you could start heading down south. But if you don't actually have a roadmap or a plan, you're not going to end up at your destination. Having a plan in place when it comes to finances ensures that every single dollar that we earn has an assignment, and we know exactly where that dollar is going before we even receive it. And that's the most important part, is if you receive money and you don't have a plan for where it's going to go, it can end up anywhere. But if you have a strict written out budget that says, hey, every dollar that I'm going to earn, it's going to go to this spot, you need to have a plan in place. And now one thing I will say is personal finance is just that, personal. Sometimes it is okay to stray away from the plan if you see a better opportunity that presents itself, but make sure you try to revert back to the game plan. And that's why I say personal finance is personal, because it's going to be different, a little bit different for everybody. You might decide to do something before something else, or you might critique this step a little bit. But just remember that at the end of the day, it is personal. Why are we recording this podcast today? Well, did you know that 40% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency? Meaning 4 out of 10 people in the room cannot afford a $1,000 bill if it came to them. Whether it's a car bill, medical debt, student loan payment, 40% of Americans can't afford an emergency, and that's important. So what are the steps? The first step is defense. You've heard the phrase that defense wins championships before, but also think of a boxer. A boxer plays offense and defense at the same time. Sometimes the best offensive attack is grounded upon a solid defensive approach. Your first defense is an emergency fund, step number 1. Did anyone else's grandma tell them to save for a rainy day? Your emergency fund ideally should be between 6 to 9 months of your household expenses. So a good starting point is if you go through your last, say, 3 to 4 months of bank statements, total up your expenses, average them out, and you want to have 6 to 9 months of emergency fund expenses. The primary purpose of the emergency fund is to prevent you from either having to borrow money at super high interest rates or withdraw money from retirement accounts, which is going to incur tax and penalties. An emergency fund also provides you with peace of mind. A good starting point, like we said, is to look at your 3 most recent bank statements, but I mentioned 6 to 9 months, and 6 to 9 months is going to depend or vary based upon your profile. If you're single, perhaps with no kids and less responsibilities, you can afford to have 6 months of an emergency fund. However, if you have a family and someone else is depending upon your income, it is better to have closer to 9 months. But also it could depend on your career field. If you're in a stable career, maybe you're making a lot of money, you can afford to have on the lower side of 6 months. If your career is not so stable, maybe go to 9 months. The second step in the 7-step plan is to have your health and life insurance covered. This is absolutely essential, and I think it goes without saying. Health insurance is needed for people of all ages. Not having health insurance and having to incur a hefty medical bill can set your wealth building journey back so much. I had a young friend that he didn't have health insurance, and he had kidney stones. It was 25, 26, and it was a $9,000 medical bill. And that set his wealth building journey back so far because he had to come out of pocket for that. As far as life insurance goes, we should have term, not whole life insurance. It should be owned by everyone, at least enough to cover, say, burial or funeral expenses. However, if someone's depending upon your income to live, you should have a term policy that's at least 10x your salary. That way your family is covered if something were to happen to you. Not trying to be morbid. My third step is you want to contribute up to your employer match percentage. Whatever your employer is matching in your 401k, maybe it's 3%, 4%. Whatever it is, you want to contribute up to that match because it's free money on the table. It's a guaranteed rate of return. The reason why I say only to contribute to the match is because oftentimes employer 401ks are expensive when it comes to fees. And I believe there are better uses for your money after you've already gotten your employer match, that guaranteed return. So third step, contribute up to your employer match percentage, but not further. The fourth step is going to be, you're going to want to pay off your higher interest debt. So I define high interest debt as anything, I would say 7% or greater. So debt like private student loans, car loans, credit card debt, any debt that's 7% or greater, we need to pay that off first because you're losing out on purchasing power over time because 7%, you're losing out on 7% each year because that's how much you're paying in interest on those loans. So the spread between that 7% and to say maybe we could invest that money, 7% is way too high to beat out the spread. And that's why if you have high interest debt, like a car loan, like a student loan, credit card debt, you're going to want to pay that off. That's step number 4, is to pay off high interest debt. The fifth step, I would say, is you want to max out your Roth IRA and your HSA if you qualify and you're under the income limits. I've talked before on other podcasts about how cool and how essential the Roth IRA is when it comes to wealth building. For young people starting in their careers, they're often in the lowest tax bracket that they will ever be in their life, and that way they're able to make Roth contributions at a lower tax rate and let that money earn and grow tax-free. Also, I just released a podcast on the HSA, and it's a super cool account. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you go check it out. There's a lot of flexibility with the Roth and the HSA accounts that we want to utilize. And just to throw out a stat, if you invest $160 a month from age 25 to 65 at just a 10% rate of return, you would retire a millionaire. So $160 a month from age 25 to 65 in that Roth IRA account puts you at a millionaire when it comes time to retire. The sixth step is to pay off lower interest debt. Debt like maybe public student loans, credit cards, car loans, etc. This is the step where we polish off the low-hanging debts, the smaller interest debts. Now, I did not mention your mortgage payment, and so I go back and forth on this, and again, I've released podcasts on this before, but if you want to pay your house off early, your primary residence early, you can, but you will have a higher ROI investing it elsewhere, say the stock market or in other investments, real estate. You'll have a higher ROI investing it elsewhere as opposed to pouring equity into your home. If your primary residence debt is 3% or less, you can make a spread on investing that difference if you're comfortable with it. Now, I would not, if my emergency fund wasn't there, I would not be paying off my house early because I don't have a big enough emergency fund to weather a storm. But if you're comfortable in life, you can get by with either, maybe you're not speeding up your paying off your mortgage. Maybe you do speed up your mortgage payoff. That depends on you and what you feel personally. Again, it's personal finance. But me, because I'm able to capture a primary residence loan at less than 3%, I know that I can make money elsewhere. So that's why I'm not prioritizing paying off my house. But again, if it's a decision that you want to make because it gives you sound financial sense, you should do so. The seventh and final step, this is where it gets fun, is you want to invest 20% of your income in order to become financially free. So 20% of whatever you make, take home, you're going to want to invest that in order to become financially free. Once you have a solid financial footing, you're ready to accumulate massive amounts of wealth. You should consider some of the following investments. Maybe going back to those retirement accounts for tax advantage investing. Maybe open up a taxable brokerage account for investing flexibility. Tax efficiency also with a taxable brokerage account. Check out my episode on April 18th about this. Maybe you want to start investing into crypto or doing cars on Turo. Maybe you want to invest in real estate for cash flow appreciation, loan pay down, and tax benefits. There's so many things that you could do once you hit the seventh step of investing. Once you're comfortable in life with your finances, that you really open the door for wealth building and generational wealth. We covered a lot today with these 7 steps. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. That's going to be at Learn Like a CPA on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I do have a conference that I will be speaking at in June. It's going to be the short-term rental conference in Nashville. Also, I will be hosting a boot camp this fall centered around short-term rental taxation. So if you want information about it as well as early bird pricing, check out the link in the show notes. If you like the show, be sure to give me a review on Spotify and Apple Music. And if you have any questions you'd like me to answer on the show, again, hit me up on my social media. It'll be Instagram or Twitter at Learn Like a CPA. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.